Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CasualPetitive Games Podcast, the show for anyone who loves games. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the background and games of one of our all-time favorites, the GOAT, Richard Garfield. I'm your host, Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host, Cameron, today.
Hello.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Richard Garfield's background, some games that he's pretty famous for designing. You might have heard of a few of them, I think. If you play any games at all, I think you've probably played a Richard Garfield game. Cam and I are going to talk about our favorite Richard Garfield games, and we're just going to see where it goes. Have some fun. Richard Garfield.
Heard of him. I'm
gonna do something a little cheeky, Cam. I'm gonna pull up the Richard Garfield Wikipedia page here,
okay.
And I'm literally just gonna read from it. So it's up on the screen. If you're watching the YouTube video, just watch. You can read along with me. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, are you in for a treat? No reading for you today. So Richard Channing Garfield. I don't know if you knew that was his middle name.
I did not. I learned that tonight when I opened up the wiki as well.
He was born June 26th, 1963. He's an American mathematician, inventor, and game designer. So he's most famous for the creation of the game Magic the Gathering. Probably, a little game that you might have heard of or played.
Literally as old as myself, personally.
Yeah, we were both born the year that Magic came out.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's actually nuts.
So it debuted in 1993, Magic the Gathering did, and its success spawned many imitation card games. So Garfield oversaw Magic, and he did some other game designs, including quite a few that we're going to talk about today: Keyforge, Netrunner, a whole, basket full of CCGs, TCGs, online games, all sorts of different things. I feel like with some people, they have like a niche, right? And he definitely has it. Like, I think TCGs and CCGs are his thing, but he's also a hell of a board game designer too.
Oh, it's so true.
I guess we can read a little bit here about his early life, family, and education. He was born in Philadelphia, spent his childhood in many locations throughout the world as a result of his father's work in architecture. And his family eventually settled in Oregon when he was 12. Here's a fun fact. He was the great-great-grandson of U.S. President James A. Garfield, and his granduncle Samuel Fay invented the paperclip.
Wow.
So, yeah. Prolific family of inventors.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's like a vampire family,
Yeah,
They're really specific.
Yeah, I wonder if he deals with the eternal struggle.
Hey. Hey. Whoa.
Hey. His passion for games was kickstarted when he was introduced to Dungeons and Dragons, and he designed his first game when he was 13 years old. In 1985, Richard Garfield received a Bachelor of Science degree in computer mathematics. After college, he joined Bell Laboratories, but soon after decided to continue his education and attended the University of Pennsylvania, which is where the magic happened. So he was studying mathematics for his PhD.
That all just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about his development style and his brain a little bit, but like this background of him being a doctor in math really makes a lot of sense.
So Richard Garfield actually co-wrote this book called Characteristics of Games. I have a copy of this book. I have not read the entire thing because it's not really the kind of book that you sit down and read. It's more of like a reference.
It's like a textbook.
Yeah, it is. It's a literal textbook. But it's honestly, like, if anybody's interested in game design, pick this up, because whenever I'm designing games, I find myself like flipping through this just to get some ideas or to better understand how certain mechanisms should work. The reason I bring this up is that it really kind of helps you, and it wasn't written just by Richard Garfield, but he was a huge part of it. But it really helps you kind of delve into the mind of these like mathematical game designers and sort of what they would consider like how to build a good game, and the level at which, especially in that book, they talk about balancing a game, and eliminating elements of luck and replacing them with skill and that sort of thing. And it's just, you can really see it in his designs, how he's developed his games to truly be something that's really fun, but also just so deep. Like, all of his games have so much depth to them because he's just really thought about them that hard.
That's really well said. Like, he does a really good job at like making a simple system for anyone to pick up and learn. But that is, like you said, just like tip of the iceberg stuff. Like when you play these games and get into them, like it's easy to dip your toes in. But then like if you fully want to immerse, like they go really, really deep and complicated. And again, it's a tribute to his background. Like it makes sense. There's a lot of variables in a 52 card deck of cards, like, and to be able to see those and think through those as much as you possibly can and try to balance them or not try to balance them intentionally is all very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think what you just said too, the not balancing is really really what led to making Magic what it is. I was watching a short video on YouTube. It mentions it here in the Wikipedia article, but I'll just talk about it based on the video I watched. So basically, the story of how Magic sort of came to be is Richard Garfield started out with this card game called Five Magics, and it was actually inspired by the game Cosmic Encounter. Have you ever played the game Cosmic Encounter?
Yeah, I love Cosmic Encounter.
For anyone who hasn't played it, in that game, you pick like an alien race that you are, and you have like a special ability, and you're trying to like take over planets with these little plastic spaceships. And it's a lot deeper than that, but I'm not going to get super into it. But basically, his whole idea was, what if like these alien powers, what if instead of like having a character with those powers, it was just you had a deck of cards and every single one of those cards had different power things that they could do. And so this kind of led to the initial idea for Magic the Gathering. But actually the game that Richard Garfield approached Wizards of the Coast with first was his game Robo Rally, which was a board game. Wizards of the Coast liked it, but kind of the problem with it is it would be too expensive to produce, which I don't know if anybody out there has tried to make their own games. Cam and I designed some of our own games, and I don't know about you, Cam, but that is a constant struggle for me. Like, I have a game right now that I'm developing, and I'm going to pitch it to publishers this year at Gen Con because the costs associated with producing it, I need somebody to publish it in order for this game to become a reality, because it's just way too expensive for me to like self-publish. So it's games can be really expensive if they're more than just like a deck of cards, which kind of leads to, you know, Wizards was like, okay, well, that's too expensive, but like, what if you made us a trading card game? So Richard Garfield came up with this idea for Magic, and everyone would have these decks that were all different from each other because there would be different rarities of cards. So it'd be like, oh, this person has Mox Opal, but like I don't, because that card's really rare. So their deck is very unique to them because, you know, of the rarity. And that was kind of the initial idea, right? Was there's like common cards that everybody has in their decks. There's uncommon cards that like most people do. And then there's like rare cards where it's like, oh, that person has that card and they only have like 1 or 2 copies of it. We all know kind of where that eventually led with rarities, which is quite interesting in that.
But an incredible concept.
An incredible concept. Yeah. Because it's like, how do we make people's decks unique from each other? Right.
Yeah. While still giving people options.
Yes.
And I love where it leads. But yeah, for everyone uninitiated, I will say, like, you've probably heard the name and you will be surprised how many games that you have heard of have the name attached to it. Mm-hmm. That's what I've been finding out ever since I started my deep dive into Richard Garfield's different games. Like, you just go into any game store, look at the shelf, and a lot of them that stand out to you, he's probably in the credits for. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's we were just talking earlier when we were like, okay, what games do we want to talk about? And then you mentioned one, and I was like, wait, he worked on that?
Right, yeah. It's funny.
But I was going to say, a little spoiler for what we're going to talk about later. I think he did finally figure out the unique deck feel that he was going for with one of
I personally think so.
Yeah.
I think I don't think he's fully satisfied with it. We'll get to this.
Yeah.
But I think he's made incredible bounds in that space. Like just unparalleled. We'll get to it.
We'll get there. I know you're like itching to talk about that.
I'm chomping at the bit, baby. My favorite game.
If anybody,
it's my favorite game.
If anybody knows Cam from any of the other stuff we do, you know exactly what we're talking about. But we're gonna keep everyone else in suspense because we got to keep you hooked so that we get your sweet view time or listen time or whatever it is you're doing. So let's start things off with Robo Rally.
Sure.
This is a game that neither one of us have played, I think.
No, because it was made when I was 1. So
yeah. Well, here's the thing. I am looking at this game and
it looks right up my alley.
It looks right up my alley too.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
It looks, you know what it looks like? It looks like Robot Quest Arena, which
I knew you were going to say that, which we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Again, if you know either of us, you know we love Robot Quest Arena a lot.
This looks cool.
This is so ahead of its time for 94 too.
Yeah, I'm looking at this game and I'm like, this could be a game that I played at Gen Con last year.
It could be a Restoration Games or like a Stonemeyer game.
Yeah.
Recently, like new.
Yeah, it just looks awesome. I like I don't fully know how to play this game, but after doing this episode, I really want to go check this game out. Especially knowing
I'd love to play it.
Especially knowing the history of like how he kind of pitched this first and then Magic kind of developed after that because this was too expensive to make, which looking at the components, I totally understand why it was too expensive to make. But
Especially 30 years ago.
Yeah, like these metal.
There's a lot going on there. Board games in the 90s were Trouble, which is just plastic on plastic on plastic. Sorry, and Monopoly, which are just, foldable cardboard boards.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple little plastic pieces and a lot of cards and a couple of dice. Like that's what board games were.
Yeah.
When you look at Robo Rally on the Wikipedia, there's what looks like a sand timer. There's boards. There's the game board itself, but also individual player boards. It looks like pieces, cards, a lot of stuff. That's a lot for 94. It looks like Clue if each piece was like really functional.
Well, knowing the story behind the development of this game, I think it was one of those things where like, that's too expensive. We can't make that. And then he made Magic, and then I'm pretty sure they were just like, yeah, so you have any other games? We'll make literally anything you want to make, we'll make it.
Yeah.
So the little, I wish I knew more about this, but just taking a look at Robo Rally, just on Board Game Geek. So the original one came out in 1994. Then there was another version, like a re-implemented version is what it says, in 2016. And then there was another newer version that came out, looks like last year, 2023.
Oh, Renegade. I love Renegade. They do Clank.
But this looks awesome. I also saw there's one that I don't think it's out yet. Maybe, you know what? Maybe we'll get to play it at Gen Con this year.
At Gen Con, yeah.
Yeah. It is the Robo Rally 30th anniversary, which...
Wow.
Yeah, makes sense because you and I are 30, and we did talk about this came out. If this is going to be at Gen Con this year, maybe that's my chance to finally try this 30-year-old game. So yeah, since we know the history of this here, let's move into Magic the Gathering. By the way, I'm going to take this opportunity to mention to everyone, Cam and I are by no means, the show is CasualPetitive Games. So we play games casually, we play games competitively. We are not a news source, so we're probably going to get some stuff wrong in the episode. And so I would just like for you to consider pretty much everything we say to be like, fact check it yourself. If don't write a research paper based on this episode of our stupid little podcast. But also, we're mostly just going to be giving our opinions. And we're huge Richard Garfield fans, so we will be critical when necessary. But most of the time, I think him and I are both generally pretty positive on Richard Garfield's games.
Yeah, honestly, and we'll probably get into this too. But like we're both big fans of Richard Garfield games. We are less big of fans as those who actually publish his ideas and then take over the games.
Yes,
Which is that could be a whole episode in and of itself, right? The
Yeah.
difference between design and publishing.
Well, I have the Magic the Gathering Board Game Geek page pulled up, and I think that's actually the perfect segue to talk about this, because we were talking about the rarity system in Magic, the original like design. The rarity system was more of a design thought than a like business move.
Yes, because in that time, right? Like we think of card games and we think of like, Black Lotus for Magic. We think of, which we'll get into, but we're like, we think of Charizard and Pokemon, first edition, base set, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing people send every kind of trading card in to get graded from a PSA value from 1 to 10, and like Pokemon, you're hitting so many different things now. It like that is a thing.
Yeah.
Because of Magic.
Yep. And it wasn't intentional.
Right. Because at the time, you don't know that people are going to go nuts and spend money and be whales, which is a term in the industry that describes people that spend a lot of money on one product. So like Lorcana most recently had a lot of whales that were, disrupting with the allocation, distribution, just product availability like crazy. All of those things really happened with Magic for the very first time. So that's like, say what you will about Magic, like whether you've played it or not, it's been around for 30 years and it literally set every bar, every precedent, every bias, every dislike for trading card games or collectible card games moving forward ever since. And it's still in the game. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. It's really set the standard.
Big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first card game. Richard Garfield is the grandfather of trading card games as we know them today.
It's honestly really incredible that Magic is still around and that there's still so many people who play it. The way that people have played it has changed. Let me actually, chances are, if you're watching this, you're familiar with games and therefore you probably already know how to play Magic and how it works, but I'll give a quick overview of how it works. Basically, there are these land cards. There are 5 different colors. There's white, blue, black, red, and green. All the colors have their own unique identities to them, and this is kind of, if you remember, the original name for this game, I guess, was the 5 Magics, and essentially you have your different lands that are different colors. You tap them and this game invented this word, tap, which is now kind of just I don't know how to say that word, ubiquitous.
Ubiquitously. I guess just synonymous with rotating 90 degrees.
That's a better way to put it, so I don't have to say a complicated word. Rotating a card 90 degrees is tapping it. And Magic is the game where that terminology originated from, and it is not only used to this day in Magic, but also in literally any card game I play. If I'm turning a card sideways, the game might use some different terminology. The most popular one, I think, these days is exhaust. But we all know it's tapping. You're tapping it. When you tap a land, you're like tapping it for the resource. Like you're extracting the mana.
Energy.
The
mana.
The mana from it. And the mana you then use to cast spells and play creatures, and the creatures battle each other, and you're 2 wizards who are fighting each other in this like spell warfare on the battlefield. And that's kind of like the basis of the game. I don't think that people who play Magic actually get that into the actual like lore element while they're playing. Maybe some people do, I don't know, but I think for probably
there is a lot of lore to at least like the planeswalkers, the creatures themselves. But what you're saying, the lore of the game, what the 2 players are doing is you're planeswalkers. You've traveled all these lands and you have a book, and that's your deck, and it's a list of spells. So each card in the game is a spell. Monsters are spells, enchantments are spells, auras are spells. And then the lands represent the areas that you've traveled to that you're extracting your memories and your energy from.
That's right. I totally forgot the deck is called a library in Magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. So that's kind of the basis of the game.
Very high fantasy.
Yeah. So the original topic that we were kind of getting into with this, and we can take this conversation a million different ways, but I think, Richard Garfield designed this great, amazing game, and he has since stepped back in every now and then to design some sets. I think now, though, the unintentional consequence of card rarities has led to, and this is where we can get into the differences between the publisher and the designer, Wizards of the Coast making some decisions for the game that kind of deviate from maybe the original plan. I think the most, heinous thing I can point to is like I think it was the 30th anniversary of Magic collection that was actually just like 4 booster packs for like $1,000 or something. And then they release all these secret lair cards all the time. So the rarity thing is to your point, more about actual collecting and not so much about making people's decks unique. And I think that's kind of where the trading part of the game in TCG, the trading card game, I think that's where the trading gets kind of lost, because I don't think people are trading as much. I think people still do, but I think it's mostly just, to your point, like whales buying like really expensive cards.
I think children and teenagers still trade.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But
because that's their only option.
Advanced, right. Exactly. As the internet advanced as well, and as people who were children when trading card games were booming, i.e. you and I.
Yes.
As we become adults and have income and disposable income, or not disposable income, but we get addicted to the things we did as a child, I think that is what killed the concept of trading card games and looking for that rare thing, because now we go to a site like TCG Player and we buy those rare cards that we didn't open in our packs, or we buy multiple boxes of boosters instead of just asking our parents at the grocery store, hey, can I have the Pokemon pack on our way out?
Yeah.
And so again, that's really what created the concept of the whales too, is people from the very beginning, probably even back then without the internet, were like, I need this card because no one else has it. It has a really powerful effect. It makes me unique and important in this space. I just so happen to also have a lot of extra money laying around. So if you give me this card, I will give you this much money. And thus the secondary market for rare cards and collectible cards and trading cards really went like crazy, because like for baseball cards, those had value because they were limited runs, but you don't do anything else with baseball cards. There were games in the 90s that they tried to create that were based around baseball cards, but like none of them ever really did anything. There's no competitive baseball card game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Magic was that different thing where it's like, this card is rare, but it also has value to the game itself. It's mechanically powerful. It's a big deal. It's like Seto Kaiba's 3 blue eyes white dragons. You know what I mean? Like,
but I think to your point though, the Seto Kaiba's 3 blue eyes white dragons in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime is how Richard Garfield envisioned how Magic. That's what you're saying, right?
Envisioned, yes. Yeah.
Is like Seto Kaiba is the only guy who has those. And maybe he does hunt down the 4th one and rip it up. Who knows?
He does. And makes a grown old man have a heart attack and go to the hospital.
Yeah. Just as Richard Garfield intended.
Exactly.
I think that the original concept is really cool.
Very cool.
We can spend quite a bit of time on Magic, and I think that's fine.
It's still around.
It's still around. It's probably the most prolific thing that Richard Garfield has created. I would like to know, when did you get into Magic? Or like, I mean, you and I are not like into Magic. Like I think we both, we're casual Magic players, I would say, at this point.
Yeah. I don't know all the history. I know the rules. I know how to be good at the game. And I play on the app. I don't have a bunch of physical cards, but I play MTG Arena. I'm a very free to play player. When I was in college, my dorm room, like our RA, it was like a whole thing at the beginning of the college year. Apparently they just tape Magic the Gathering starter decks to everybody's dorm room door.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they just taped them to everybody's door, and they're like, this is a good icebreaker. If you don't know how to play, find someone who does. You probably will. And if you do know how to play, teach someone who doesn't. And I thought that was really, really cool. And I learned how to play the game. And my first deck was a green half deck. It was just 30 cards, like 12 forests, and just a bunch of really cool creatures. And I learned how to play the game like that.
That's really cool that your school did that.
Yeah. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I guess that probably didn't happen for everybody else. I just kind of assumed that that's what happened when you get to college. You get Magic the Gathering cards. You either accept them fully or you go, ew.
It sounds like you went to like an anime school where they're like, welcome to Magic School.
I went to Duelist Academy. Yeah. I was Jin Yuki's best friend.
That's amazing.
Chumley. I'm Chumley.
That's amazing.
It wasn't until probably like 3 or 4 years later, me and my brother were just like, we're old enough now that like we're not pretending that we're cool. Yeah. And we're like, he was home from college, I was just hanging out or something, and we're like, you want to just go buy a couple Magic the Gathering decks and play? And we got that so into it. Yeah. It was so fun. So like for that summer or whenever that was, I don't even fully remember, but like we got into Magic and I learned how to play it. Yeah. At that point, I just got really into tabletop and board gaming.
Yeah. My background with Magic, you and I had some similar starting points. I never actually played the Pokemon TCG, but I did collect the cards because I watched the show. But I never was really very interested in the game itself. But then a friend of mine introduced me to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I played that. And I started actually going to like regionals and tournaments and stuff for Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was like a kid. And I kind of got exposed to this competitive scene. And then I had a friend who played Yu-Gi-Oh! And then discovered Magic and just fell in love with it, especially from a competitive standpoint. It was, my very first set was Lorwyn. That was like the first Magic set I played, which is this, there's like elves and goblins and tree folk, and I just loved that setting. And honestly, I really want that setting to come back for Magic. I played like Lorwyn and Shadowmoor and Eventide and all those. And I played through
it's a tribal set.
Yes.
I'm looking at the wiki.
Yeah, it's all,
I would love this set.
It was an amazing set, and it kind of it really structured the way that I play like every card game now. Like, and you and I are kind of the same. I'm always looking for those like I love tribal decks. Like I love building like a Merfolk deck or whatever. Merfolk were also in Lorwyn. Like that was one of the like the
blue
races
and
there.
White. It looks like.
Yeah, they so then the cool thing about that block, and this is when Magic used to have these blocks where it'd be like you'd be in this plane for like the next 3 or 4 sets. So you're in a single plane for like 3 or 4 sets, and like all of the sets are connected. You got Lorwyn and Morningtide, and then you got Shadowmoor and Eventide. Because Lorwyn was such like a happy, like there's fairies and everybody's smiling and dancing and partying.
Looks very like high fantasy, the beginning of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Then Shadowmoor and Eventide, shit goes down, things get dark, and you've got
middle of Lord of the Rings.
They did this really cool thing where they introduced hybrid colored cards where like the mana symbol was like split in half. Those cards were like, they did like enemy colors, like colors that usually aren't mixed together. Or like if the Kithkin were this color in the other set, now the Kithkin are this color. That block was the perfect one to get into Magic because it really showed me like what you can do with a card game, and it just blew my mind. And I got so invested. Also, this was back when the fat packs, like the big fat pack things that come with packs and dice and all that, used to come with books. And there was a book about Reese the elf, and I read that book and just fell in love with the world of Magic. And that was it. I was hooked. I was into Magic. I played it all the way through the Innistrad block, which I think came out around the time I was finishing high school. I got out of Magic and sold a bunch of my cards because I had lots of very valuable cards, and it actually paid for my first semester of college.
Holy hell.
Yeah, but it was my like entire Magic collection, and sometimes now I look back on it and I really miss some of those cards, and some of those cards are quite valuable now. All right, is there anything else we want to say about Magic?
Just that it still holds up. I know Wizards and whoever designs and develops different sets here and there, there's a lot of people. It's a big team. It's obviously not what it used to be. However, it still has the staying power. It's still in what's called the top 3, right? Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. We've never seen another trading card game be as successful as the one that started it, and it's still going. So like, if you want to get into the space of collectible card games, trading card games, I know you've heard Magic. Just give it a shot. It's a solid game. They're doing a lot to fix its original flaws, like the mana system. Okay, like power creep, obviously, to fit with lower mana costs, like search cards, all this stuff. They're trying to fix it, but it's still an incredible game. It's really, really well done. It's got a lot of top designers in the space right now that I know of, that I follow on Twitter, that are like, yeah, I worked on this card. Like it's got a lot of people looking at it. There's a lot of love for it. There's no way that you can't find it and can't get into it. I highly suggest it. Like, it's a great place to start in card gaming, but it's also just a staple for a reason. It's got staying power, and odds are that you'll find something about it that you like. It's very, very good.
I think that's the reason I keep coming back to Magic, is that it's just so consistent, and it's so easy to play. Like, I can jump back into any Magic the Gathering set, and maybe there's like new abilities, new effects, new whatever, but at the core of it, it's still Magic. So
it's the same game.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just get used to the new cards, and then like after like a couple plays of getting my ass kicked by some new like 3-card combo or something that I didn't know about, I'm back in. I'm hooked. I'm like, oh, there's dinosaurs, there's cowboys riding dinosaurs, cool, sign me up, I'm in.
Yeah, Ixalan got me back in when they were doing dinosaurs and like South American stuff. I was like, yeah, I'm in. Lost Caverns, let's go. And then the next one was like Clue, but Magic the Gathering. Like, literally, it was literally Clue. I was like, sure, fuck yeah. I'm a little spirit detective. I got my bats and my ghosts snitching on you bitches. I'll play it. And now it's cowboys. It's Wild Wild West. Dinosaur cowboys. I'm into it. It's fun. It's just fun. Play it.
I also love there's a little bit of fan service in Magic, because people, for whatever reason, are like, I want to build a deck where all of my cards are rats, and then Magic is just like, you know what? We're gonna make that happen. We're just gonna keep releasing rat cards, and then rat cards that are powered by rat strategies.
And and I talk about this video a lot, but ProZD does really funny, like, every card game ever kind of videos. And he has this one where it's like, I play Milk Factory, which allows me to generate 2 milk tokens, which lets me play a dairy cow from my hand. And it's just like, that is Magic the Gathering. It really is. You can make a meme deck, and it's pretty quality sometimes. And it's just funny. It's cool. It's great. It's high fantasy at its best.
Just talking about this is making me want to go re-download Magic the Gathering Arena. I had to I feel bad about this. I had to delete it from my phone because it's big, and my phone was like, you need space to download this update. And I
still have it. I haven't been playing it, but I still have it.
I still have it on my iPad because that's my favorite place to play. But
that me too. It looks so good on an iPad.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, if you're listening to this right now and you've never played Magic and you've always wanted to try it, just download Magic the Gathering Arena. You can play for free.
Yeah.
Like
with good stuff. They give you like 10 starter decks. If you've never touched the app, you open it, you have 10 starter decks.
Yeah. I will say, I think the best way to play Magic is exactly what you and your brother did, though. Go to, like, you're up late, you're wanting to play some games, go to Walmart, pick up just pick up 2 starter decks. Don't even worry about what cards they have. Just look at the art. Just be like, yeah, that guy looks cool. I think I want to play him. And then just pick up 2 decks, crack them open on your kitchen table, get ketchup all over them.
Yeah. Don't sleeve the card.
Yeah. Just,
eat snacks. No, it's fun. Those cards are worthless, but they teach you the game and they're super fun. Like, I still to this day will buy Pokemon constructed decks. Like, I don't play Pokemon, but I'll play Pokemon because I know how and it's fun. Every now and then.
You and I both love to just crack a structure deck from a...
It's my favorite way to play a game. They're great because they're constructed for you to just pull them out of the box and play. And it's fun to discover things. It's fun when you don't always know what cards do. It's fun to go, they play this, and you go, what's that do? And they explain it to you, and it, like, destroys you. And then you just go again, and then you get that knowledge. Just play a structure decks. It's so fun.
Let's talk about some other... I'm going to do some rapid fire here. I have some games that I don't think either of us have played, but these are other TCGs designed by Richard Garfield. Let's start things off with the Star Wars trading card game. I've
heard a lot of good things about the Star Wars TCG from Team Covenant.
Yes.
Specifically.
I was going to say, you and I are both huge Team Covenant fans, and they talk about this game a lot. I've never played it, but it has, some like movie stills and the art, and it's a Star Wars game. At this point, there's lots of great Star Wars games to play, but this one was designed by Richard Garfield, and it's probably pretty solid. Like, you could probably, if you can find some cards for this somewhere, it's probably worth picking it up and giving it a try. So on to the next one. Let's see. So this is one that you and I were kind of chatting about that we've never tried, and that's Vampire: The Eternal Struggle.
Yeah.
It says, manipulate your vampire minions to destroy your prey while fending off your predator. It's a multiplayer collectible card game based on the award-winning Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game. I've heard of that as well.
For sure.
I'm interested in this game, though, because I'm looking at the art, and I mean, it's so, like, how do I put this? It's like, it's so 90s, but in such the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like some of the art on these cards, it would be on a Pog. You know what I mean?
That's so cool. Man, we really are dating ourselves here.
Yeah. If you don't know what I just said means, don't worry about it.
You're too young. You're just young. We're old. Congratulations. You should still feel young.
Just the borders and the card art. Like, I need to try this game. I need to try it out. So
I'd play it.
I think if we can hunt down a couple starter decks, I would be so down to give this game a try.
I'll play any, I'm telling you, I'll play any starter decks for any game. My Little Pony, don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'll play any starter decks for a game on this show.
I think we should do it. There's something called a player's kit. Sometimes at Gen Con, there's that one booth where they have all the vintage trading card stuff. I think
that was super cool.
We should
look for some of these.
Yeah. Even it'll probably be expensive, but it's whatever. It looks awesome. All right. What do we got next? Let's see. This one is funny. It is Xena Warrior Princess CCG from 1998. That's
awesome.
This feels a little bit like Richard Garfield sold out, maybe. I don't know.
That might be a little bit of a cash grab, which get your bag, King.
Yeah.
Okay, in 98, by then, of course, people are going like, we own Buffy the Vampire IP. Can you make a card game for it? We're going to pay you $100,000.
Yeah.
And he's like, sure, Buffy's OP.
Yeah. I'm sure that whoever owned the IP rights to Xena Warrior Princess probably was like, oh, it's going to be as big as Magic if it's designed by Richard Garfield.
Oh, yeah. Plenty of Xena cards and stills we can slap on cards. Yeah.
There's a little advertisement here on Board Game Geek. It says, "Who's got the moves?" And then it says, and in like those like infographic things that like they have in like comic books. I don't remember the word for it. They're like the bubbles that like the sounds. It's like crunch, pow, smooch.
That's awesome. Wow.
This is another one though, I have to admit, like this one we probably could find kind of cheap, unless it's like a really collectible thing that I'm just totally misjudging this. I would be down to try it. And you know what? It's designed by Richard Garfield, so it's probably pretty good.
Probably.
Like it's probably fun.
It's probably great. I'll play it.
Yeah. All right, the next one I want to talk about, we're kind of moving into or actually maybe before we move there, let's talk really quick about my all-time favorite game. And it's not this version, but I'm going to show this version really quick. This is Netrunner. So Netrunner is really cool because it's an asymmetrical card game. And so one player plays as the runner and the other player plays as the corporation. And your decks have like different styles of cards in it that do different things. And so the runner is this computer hacker that's trying to like hack into the corporation servers, their computer servers, to like basically foil the corporations, the mega corporations, like evil plots, and to reveal their agendas. And the corporation is trying to advance their evil agendas, or maybe not so evil sometimes, depending on who you are. If you're the corporation, then obviously it's not evil. It's just business, baby.
It's business, baby.
It's just business, baby. This game is incredible. It started off as a trading card game, and it had I don't believe it was very popular, but it definitely had a cult following. Like there were people who were obsessed with it. I actually never played the original Netrunner, which came out in 1996, but I did play Android Netrunner, which is Netrunner, by the way, is a cyberpunk card game, and I believe the original Netrunner was set in the cyberpunk universe, like the role-playing game universe. Android Netrunner, however, is set in the Android universe, which is an IP that's owned. Android is like this own universe that's owned by Fantasy Flight Games, and so the original designer of Netrunner was Richard Garfield. I'm going a little bit off here because Lucas Litzinger is technically the guy who designed Android Netrunner, but it's really all the base game that Richard Garfield gave us.
Right.
They made some huge improvements on Android Netrunner in that they created these identities, which I think is huge because the lore of this game is so cool, and there's different factions. So you can be a runner who's focused entirely on like criminal activities. You're all about the money. You're all about stealing. You're all about, doing illegal shit. Or you could be an anarchist, which is one of the factions, which you don't really care. You just want to blow stuff up. You just want to like watch the world burn.
Mechanically, it's just how you build your deck, but then like the lore, like you're saying, is like that explains why these characters are showing up together and what their overarching goal is in the game and outside of the game.
Well, the identities also mechanically serve to limit what cards you can play in your deck, which I think greatly improved the game because not only do the identities now have this very distinct feel to them, but also not everyone's running the same cards because you literally cannot. Like if you want to play this identity, these agendas and these ice and like these different upgrades and things are not available to you. There is like a system built into the game that allows you to pull in cards from other factions. I'm not going to get into all that, but
sure.
Basically, though, they took Richard Garfield's original design, really improved upon it, and Android Netrunner is one of my favorite games of all time. I would love to play the original Netrunner, but again, it has that cult following, and the cards are very expensive. I bought a pack of original Netrunner, just a booster pack, a single one, and I probably overpaid because I was at Gen Con and it was the thing to do. But I spent $20 on just a single booster pack. And it's a 1996 trading card game, so I don't even know if I got a rare in the pack because, you know, it was just how things were back in the day.
Yeah, the pull rates were, I think, literally random.
Yeah, I also just am not really sure. I wasn't really sure of the rarities. Like, I don't know if it's actually listed on the card or if it's just like, you know, certain cards are rare because you know them. Yeah. But man, Android Netrunner, absolutely amazing game. I think you and I have played this together maybe like once or twice, but I would love to play it more with you for sure.
I'd love to play it more. I thought it was really, really interesting. Like the mechanics and the system itself are so cool. I love asymmetry in games. I think that's what makes them the most exciting. And yeah, like everything that I know, which is very limited, about Android Netrunner is something that I'm really into and excited about. And I look for elements of in other games that are still being made or coming out in the future.
Yeah, it's
good.
There's nothing like it, and it is actually, so this game, it has been discontinued by Fantasy Flight Games, but it is living on through this like fan-based organization called Nisei, and they are keeping it going and releasing new cards and new sets, and they're keeping it alive. But honestly, yeah, shout out to Richard Garfield for bringing us the original game. It's one of those games that if Netrunner came back again, like from a, you know, a publisher that could really push it, like the fan organization is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Like I love that they're keeping it going. It's more so that it's going to remain a niche game because of the state that it's in, because the fan organization does not have the and also they don't want to get sued because they're not you know, so they can't, there's only so much they can do. Like I think if they sell, you know, these like print and play, you know, cards that you can use, and they allow you to use proxies and stuff for the fan made version of this game now, but they can't, it's not going to be for sale at your local game shop. It's not going to be for sale at Walmart. And so I would love to see, I don't actually know who owns the rights to Netrunner right now. I don't know if it went back to Wizards of the Coast or because they were the.
I think that's the problem. The reason FFG had to drop it. This is, I don't know for sure. This is just something I think I know.
Yeah,
I think that they like had the chance to re-up it but didn't, and so it fell back to Wizards.
Yeah.
And Wizards was like, well, I mean, we don't know what you're doing with the game right now, so we're not going to do anything with it, but we're going to hold on to it.
I think this is an interesting discussion because, and again, this is just, I don't have any basis for this, but there's a lot of weird timing stuff around how this all played out because Wizards, remember that the original Netrunner is based off of the cyberpunk role-playing game.
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast owns the Netrunner like mechanisms. Fantasy Flight owns the Android universe that this new Android Netrunner is set in. So all of a sudden, Fantasy Flight doesn't keep the mechanisms of Netrunner. They own the Android IP. What's really weird is that around the same time that this all happened, and again, this is just me speculating, I don't actually know anything, the cyberpunk video game, Cyberpunk 2077, made by
CD Projekt Red.
From CD Projekt Red, who is famous for The Witcher. This is me. You know that meme of the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Yeah, where he's got like the red, you know, lines and he's connected.
But I'm there in the front row with popcorn because I know exactly where you're going with this, and I agree. It's got to be something like that.
The Witcher has a card game in it called Gwent.
Yes.
And so CD Projekt Red has this like history kind of making this RPG with a card game built in. And I thought, you know, and maybe this was, again, total speculation. Maybe this was part of the plan. I was like, what if Netrunner is like somehow in the cyberpunk,
could you imagine,
like universe / video game? Now,
V, I got a job for you. You got to go down to the game store and you got to play Netrunner to win this gun.
Yeah,
so you can rob the guys.
Obviously that never happened. And it's possible that never happened because the absolute like development hell that the Cyberpunk 27 video game ended up in. But again, it's also maybe totally unrelated and has nothing to do with it. But
sure,
that was, my mind was going crazy. And maybe because it's one of those things where it's like all of a sudden this game I love, and the game seemed to be doing pretty well at the time. Like it was no Magic the Gathering, but it was solid. It was like the very last official World Championships I went to, I think had 330 people at it. If I remember,
that's a lot.
If I remember correctly, which it was like a lot of people.
For any card game that's not Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and Pokemon,
yeah,
that's a lot.
It was a lot. It's just like I just didn't really feel like it was doing that badly. So in my head, I was like, maybe Fantasy Flight dropped it to save money, but also like it didn't really seem like they needed to because I think it was doing pretty well. So I just feel like there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, that we can speculate on, but we don't know. Maybe we'll never know. Unfortunately. But with all that being said, I think the mechanisms are back in the hands of Wizards of the Coast, and as much as I would love to see it set in the Android universe, I would not be mad if Wizards of the Coast was like, Netrunner's coming back and it's no longer an LCG. That's the other thing I forgot to mention. Fantasy Flight Games turned it into an LCG, which is a living card game. So there were not booster packs or randomization or rarities. You would just buy cards and get what you get, which was actually kind of a cool model, and I really liked it at the time.
It's a neat idea.
It is a neat idea. The problem with it is, from what we were talking about earlier, collectability and like the value of your cards. When you purchase a living card game pack for $15, the cards inside are maybe not even worth the $15 you spent for the pack. Like if you're going to resell it, nobody's going to buy the used cards for what you sold it for or more. Now, it's a kind of a different story now because I think some of the Netrunner packs are actually selling for quite a bit for people who are collectors and want them because they're out of print. But at the time, if I bought like a Netrunner core set, as soon as I opened it, the value of it immediately plummeted, which is no different than buying a board game. But for someone who came from a trading card game space, you know, it is different. But anyways, if Wizards of the Coast wants to re-release Netrunner, I'm all in. Like all they have to do is say that they're doing it. I'm in. Like I'm spending. I'm switching. Like it's going to become my main game. Like there's no question. It was just such a good game. But all right, I think I'm done rambling about Netrunner. I'm gonna let you ramble about some stuff now. Let's see what's up next for us. Let's talk about some of the digital games that Richard Garfield designed. You specifically picked out a game that I have not heard of, but you seem to like it. It is a game, I have it open on Steam here, called Roguebook. Why don't you tell me a little bit about this? It looks interesting.
So I found Roguebook after pumping literally 1,000 hours into a game called Slay the Spire.
Oh, I love that game.
For those uninitiated, it is a blend of the roguelite genre and deck building genre. So what that means is roguelite. There was a game back in the day called Rogue. You would start, you'd progress, you'd die, you'd start completely over. Roguelite refers to games that you start from scratch, build a bunch of experience, change some things about your run or your character each time. And at the end, you would die and you would lose all your progress, but you might make progress towards unlocking a more powerful weapon at the start of your run, or easier bosses, or like, you know, so like things that were adjusted later on. That's what differentiates roguelite and roguelike. Deck building is a lot like roguelike video games in the sense that you and however many people are playing all start in the exact same position. Some popular deck building games, right, would be like Dominion or Ascension. The replayability is endless. There are always things to be doing. So after I played a lot of Slay the Spire, I'm looking at other card games that are in that genre, and a lot of them popped up. A lot of them are bad, but Roguebook is one of them that isn't bad. And I played it without knowing that Richard Garfield was on it. But I get into it, and it's got that same kind of feel, right? There are different characters with different starting decks, and the goal is the same, right? You're using these characters, and like these cards are their attacks, and you're trying to defeat enemies and get through this thing. But what Roguebook does really well is, instead of just dungeons like in Slay the Spire where there are different paths and you just go along a map, it actually has a hexagonal board, like a board game.
I see that in the screenshots. Yeah.
Yes. And so like the lore of it, right, is that you're painting in pages to a storybook as you're going through.
Oh, that's cool.
So you collect ink from defeating monsters, and then you can unlock different hexes on this board. And so depending on where you put your ink and like which encounters you do, is you're like exploring different parts of the board. You find different characters to use, you find different cards, you find different items, and it's just a different adventure every time. And it's really, really good, especially, you know, in a climate where those kinds of video games especially were just being released every single day. That one, I still believe, truly is cream of the crop. It's like right up there with Slay the Spire and Monster Train. Balatro, that's one of the newer ones. If you're into Balatro, you would love Roguebook. It's fun. It's really cool. The art's neat and the mechanics are solid. And it just makes sense that Garfield's on it, because the whole appeal of deck building games is that you try to break them and get the highest numbers of like whatever you're doing that you can. So it's rewarding to know its systems. Again, very easy to learn and very simple mechanics, but you can devote endless time to playing those games. So if you're a fan of Slay the Spire, which is the one that you've probably heard of, check out Roguebook. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's on every console. It's on Steam. I highly recommend it. I think it's really, really good.
So I think we're gonna have to end the podcast here, and I'm gonna download this and go play.
Yeah, dude, it's great. It's great. I love it.
I'm just joking. We're gonna continue, but I am looking at these screenshots, and I actually am, now that I'm looking at this, you recommended this to me a while ago.
I bet I did.
And why am I not playing this right now?
I don't know.
Because this looks. And then especially in finding out that it was designed by Richard Garfield. And here's the other thing, from the developers of Faria, which I don't know if you ever played Faria.
Yes, I have. But maybe. Faria is also a deck building game with like a board game hex mechanic.
I love
Roguebook is the definitive edition. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I have to play this because I got really into Faria for a minit.
That's great. Yeah, you'll love it. I think it's like similar characters in art.
Wow. Okay. I'm sold. I'm gonna.
It's awesome.
As soon as we're done recording this, I'm like purchasing this on Steam and downloading it.
It's great, dude.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And also, you did mention Slay the Spire, not designed by Richard Garfield, but also for anyone out there who loves card games, if you have like any interest at all in playing some digital games, like, please check out Slay the Spire. All right, moving on to another digital game by Richard Garfield. This one was interesting because I was actually kind of hyped on this one for a bit, and I think it ended up falling short. I never tried it personally, and this is a game called Artifact, and I even see that here reflected in the reviews on Steam. Like, just looking at the reviews for Roguebook, overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
Artifact, mixed. It's mixed bag here. So some people really like this game. Some people, it looked interesting to me because it was lane combat type card game. And it makes sense because it's based off of Dota 2, which is a MOBA. Which is a MOBA with lane-based stuff. So there's 3 lanes, and it lines up with the source material. And then you have that whole IP to draw from. Have you ever played Artifact, Cam? Did you ever try this one?
I did not. I learned about it right as it was like tanking in reviews. And so I was told to just go play the Elder Scrolls Online instead. So I did. That was in 2018, I think.
That's a weird pivot.
It's also a little bit kind of laney. Like, I think it was the most similar digital card game at the time, at least to my understanding.
Gotcha.
I never played Artifact.
Gotcha.
It was a little before my like digital gaming time.
Yeah. No, I never played it either. So, we can just move on from this one, but
sure.
I'd be interested to hear anyone in the comments if you have tried Artifact.
Yeah.
Did you love it? Did you hate it?
I wanted to play it. I wanted to play it.
I was hyped on it when it was announced. That's when I was hyped on it, just because it was Richard Garfield and it was a digital card game, and I was just like, okay, I'll give it a try. But I never did. I missed it, and then I think actually it's kind of like you were saying, like around the time I remembered that it existed, I started looking into it, and everybody was like, it's not good, and I was like, okay, well, I guess, you know.
It's funny. I found out about it when I was researching Keyforge. So, because I heard that a game was coming out by Richard Garfield, found out that Richard Garfield did Magic and some other stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. Artifact, that's a game that's out like right now that I could maybe play. And then I saw that it didn't do as well.
Let's move on to, let's see what else we got. There's a couple other games. I don't think we even really need to talk about these too much, but I'll just mention them briefly because I don't think either of us have actually played these. But this one's called Hive Mind, and I actually watched a video where Richard Garfield was explaining this. This is a very lightweight kind of party game where I think actually our friend group would really enjoy this. So if I find a copy of this, I might pick it up. Basically, the beehive isn't doing so well, and they need to find some bees to like kick out of the hive or something like that. That's kind of the lore behind it. But basically, all the players are bees, and then there's like a queen bee, and it's one of those like almost like Cards Against Humanity style games, but like basically the queen will pull a card that's like right, and it comes with pencils. It comes with a bunch of pencils. The queen will pull a card that'll be like, write down 5 things that are yellow, and everyone writes down 5 things that are yellow. And then the goal of the game is not to be like correct. Like you could write down fire truck, bricks, grass, you know, but
right, because they can be
maybe, but the point is you want to match with the rest of the hive. You want to be part of the hive mind. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
So you want to think of the most obvious answers.
You want to think of the most obvious answers, or if you really know the people you're playing with, you want to like
what you think they'll put down.
You want to put down what you think they will say.
That's neat.
And so you could also then you know, kind of mess with people a little bit and put like, you know, really incorrect answers, but I don't know. It just seemed like a kind of a neat game. This does not sound like a game that you would expect to be designed by Richard Garfield, but the incredible thing was when I was listening to him, because I watched a video where he explained it. He said the reason or like his logical mathematical brain with this, and the reason why he felt this design was interesting, is that he has a play group of people that are always trying to like go against the grain and like break games and stuff like that. And he was like, this is a game that's not about being right. It's about having a hive mind. It's about
that's so fun.
Yeah. So it's
I love that.
It's I also love that the mechanism of the game is people's brains. Like the play area is your mind.
That's very cool. I love games like that.
Yeah.
That's such a cool concept too, because like you're right, that is a precursor to things like you have the queen, right? And then everybody is answering things that, you know, the queen is asking. Like that is Cards Against Humanity, Red Flag, Super Fight, stuff like that. It's like there's the judge, everybody, it's like supposed to be played in a group of people that know each other, or it can be a good icebreaker. Those games, while might seem like a cash grab, I think really do have an important place. If you're going to Target and you're buying a charcuterie board, you might also buy Never Have I Ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those games are important. And so that's really cool that there's that old of a game that has that kind of that vibe. Well,
this one's from 2016, so it's not. Well, actually, that is kind of old now, isn't it?
That is a little old now. Not quite a decade, 8 years.
2016.
But I guess Cards Against Humanity was around at the same time.
2016. That was like last year, right?
Feels like it.
But no, you're totally right. I love games like this because these are games that I can get my non-gamer friends to play.
Yeah, and those are important.
Yeah.
They're gateway games. You know what I mean?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I can get my non-gamer friends to play this, and then afterwards, maybe we play something else.
It's an attention span builder.
Yeah. You're like, Oh, did you like that aspect of that really light party game? I have a very deep and strategic board game that has that in it that I can teach you. And before you know it, now it's like your friends who never play games are fucking loving Sheriff of Nottingham or Splendor or something, you know?
Yeah. And those are both success stories on my shelf right now. Both of those games.
Those games are great.
They're amazing.
All right, next up is a game called Bunny Kingdom. I actually saw this game for the first time just randomly on the shelf of the local game store that you and I go to. And the thing that drew me to it was the components. It just, it has, I mean, it's called Bunny Kingdom, and the game box is full of little plastic bunnies, little plastic carrots, and just little plastic castles. And it's just, I don't know. I have not played this game. I have no idea what it's about. I mean, I can kind of guess just based on the components and, you know, what it looks like you're placing on a world map, like bunnies and castles and stuff. I might have to try this one out.
I've only heard good things about Bunny Kingdom and King of Tokyo specifically. Those two games.
Well, let's talk about King of Tokyo really quick. King of Tokyo. So you've never played King of Tokyo?
I've not played it, but again, dude, people close to me in gaming circles are like, you should really try King of Tokyo.
So King of Tokyo, I'll give a quick overview on this one because I have played this one and I loved it. I did actually recently, I was trying to kind of pare down my board game collection just because I have way too many. So King of Tokyo was unfortunately a recent casualty of my out of my collection, just because I just never really played it. It does get stale after a while. That's another reason why I did remove it. But it's another one of those lighter weight games that I think can be like an introductory game. I think also there is some depth to it for people who are more competitive. So perfect for us, CasualPetitive.
Right.
But basically, you're playing as these big like kaiju, like big monsters, and you're trying to be the king of Tokyo, where you're on the outskirts of Tokyo in the game, and you get points for doing things and fighting the other monsters and all that. But if you go to the center, you're now the king of Tokyo. It's like a king of the hill kind of game. And you get double points and stuff while you're in the center. So the other monsters don't want you to be in the center because they want to be in the center. So you will fight and punch and like knock them out of the center of Tokyo. And then you are the new king of Tokyo and you're constantly swapping around. And it's a really fun game. I think the other reason I didn't like it, and this is just a me thing, I just don't like games that involve like lots of dice rolling.
Oh, sure. That's fair.
There's lots of dice. There's lots of dice rolling involved in King of Tokyo. And don't get me wrong. I love, you know, some dice now and then, but this is one of those games that I wanted to just be really strategic about. And it just felt like my strategies would sometimes fall through because I had to roll dice and I rolled badly.
Do you think it would work as a deck builder like Robot Quest Arena?
Maybe. I could see that happening. Yeah. Are you saying that we're going to design that game?
I don't know. Maybe. I love deck building games.
I love deck building games too. I would love to design a deck building game with you.
Engine building and deck building just makes so much sense in my mind. Like those are my favorite style of games. Stonemaier makes the best engine building games, and just deck building games are just a blast always. Wise Wizard Games does those really, really well.
Yeah, I love some of those deck builders. But King of Tokyo, really solid game.
I would play it. Sounds cool.
It's definitely worth playing, but yeah, it didn't keep its spot in my collection, but it's, again, I can kind of see, you know, Richard Garfield's influence on it, where it's there's this mental game you're playing as well, because it's like, when do I push the other person out of Tokyo so I can get in?
He's good at that.
Yeah. Which actually, drawing some similarities here to Hive Mind a little bit, is that a lot of the gameplay happens like, you know, not on the board.
Yeah. Mind Bug is a lot like that.
Let's move into Mind Bug, because I
don't mean to jump around.
No, that's what we're doing, baby.
Yeah.
Tell me about Mind Bug. Yeah.
let me tell you about Mindbug. This was co-designed by Richard Garfield. Right now, Ghost Galaxy is somehow partnered with them, publishing with them, or something like that. I think they maybe distribute it, print it, something like that. But Mindbug is a really cool game. So Richard Garfield recently, I feel like in the last few years, has been on a quest to really make a balanced, unique card game. The way that we talked about like what he envisioned Magic to be like. And so in the last few years, we're starting to see a lot of projects pop up with his name on it that you can kind of glean like probably his different ideas for what that looked like. Mindbug is great because it is a replayable and always unique, very competitive dueling game that feels like Magic, right? You're playing these creatures with a power and an effect, right? Like numbers, very Magic the Gathering. But the unique part of this game and the draw to it and the trick is that one, it's not collectible. All the cards come in a single deck. So like Mindbug, the core set, that's all you need to play the game. Every expansion playable on its own, or you can shuffle it in. Because the basic concept of the game is you take the deck, you shuffle it, both players draw 5 cards, both players get 5 more cards. That's your hand and deck. And then over the course of the game, you might be adding cards to your deck from the communal deck, but you also have these things called mind bugs. Both players have, I think, 2. And what the mind bug says is that whenever any card is played, your opponent, before its effect goes off, has the ability, if they have their mind bugs available, which you start the game with 2, they can just turn that over and take that creature and resolve its effect like they just played it.
Oh my God.
So imagine you're playing Magic the Gathering and you're like, okay, I've got the freaking the big dinosaur from Ixalan. This is it. I'm gonna play him. Oh, but my opponent still has a mind bug left. If I play this card right now, opponent mind bugs it, it goes to their side of the field. I get a new turn now because I haven't most recently played a creature. Now I have to face off against that big creature. It's just fun. Every time it's really, really different. You have to kind of like, do I play my heavy hitter now knowing that they might go away? Or do I kind of maybe bait my opponent with this like middle of the road kind of character? Or you have to think through, if I play this card and they take it, how will I respond to that?
Yeah.
And so it's just really, really fun. If you hit your opponent with like your creature, like I think 3 times, it's represented by cards.
It looks like there's like a prize card kind of system.
Yeah.
It look just based on the screen.
If you get hit, shots, you like pick up a card out of your life and then you get to use it. But like it's just fun. It's really fun. It's a very fast 2-player game. And again, there's no tokens, there's no components. Like it's just the cards in a box, and it's a unique experience every single time. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it's really,
it looks
really
like
fun.
Does it just come in like a little poker tuck box?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's in a tuck box.
How absolutely brilliant.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think that's so inspiring. Like that really shaped the way that I started looking at games that I make. It's like, that's genius. Like we don't have time for all these living card games anymore, these trading card games. Sometimes you want replayability. You want to feel like you're making different choices every time.
Yeah.
But how do you achieve that in a single box where you don't have to keep updating it? And I think Ascension did that really well. The Justin Gary Stoneblade Entertainment game, that's a deck building game. They have the core set and they have expansions, or you can just buy any of the big boxes. They all play the same. You can combine as many sets as you want, but really you only need one, and it's all right there. And I think that's just really good game design. Mindbug right now, I think they're still in the process of a game found like Kickstarter, basically. GameFound is another one of those websites for a couple new expansions.
Nice.
And there's already, I think, 3 expansions right now that exist. It's a great game. If you're looking for like a 10 to 15 minute game for 2 people, like my wife and I, when we went on our honeymoon, we brought Hannah Makoji, we brought Mindbug, because those are just quick airport games, quick like dinner games at a bar.
I love the poker tuck box because you just stick it in a bag and you have, there you go. You have a full game.
You have the full game right there.
That's awesome. This is another
very
one.
Strong.
I should probably just play it with you
Yeah, I'll play it
But
with you anytime, man. I
yeah,
love it.
but I'm also very tempted to just like again as soon as we get off this call, like go order this because
Yeah.
it looks awesome.
It's super fun. Oh, I was just gonna say, personally, it feels very like what I've heard of what Keyforge was in its earliest conception. Mindbug feels adjacent to that. I would call them sister games.
Yeah, I need to check this out. This looks so cool. And
We should play it on the channel. We can play
yeah, we can we can do a playthrough. The publishing situation on this is weird. It has like a bunch of different publishers all listed.
Yeah,
So
it's weird because like you can find it on ghostgalaxy.com. You can find it on its own website, and
yeah,
it's also on Game
could
right now.
Could you imagine you design a game and not only does one publisher want to publish it for you, but like 7 publishers are all like, yeah, we'll publish that for you. Like,
yeah, because I think the deal is, I think a French company made it. And so Richard Garfield was a co-designer, but then like in America right now, after the Kickstarter that originally funded it, I think like somehow Ghost Galaxy was like, because you know they know Richard Garfield through Keyforge, like somehow there was a connection there that's like, and Ghost Galaxy also sells Mindbug on their website or at their booth at Gen Con. I don't know how that all happened, but like they're the, I think, American way to get Mindbug.
You know what's crazy? Sorry, I was Googling things while you were talking.
No, you're good.
The one of the designers on here, Scaff Elias.
Yes.
He is one of the co-authors of the Characteristics of Games textbook that I was talking about earlier. Because I saw his name and I was like, I'm going to Google that because that looks really familiar. Yeah. And I was like, I bet he is one of the people that wrote that book with him. And he is.
That's funny.
That's really cool. I have to try this. This looks awesome.
Yeah, we'll play it.
Yeah. I think actually that's a perfect segue. Actually, there's one more thing that we didn't talk about yet, which is, and we've talked about the people involved with this a little bit. This is SoulForge Fusion. We need to talk about that.
SoulForge Fusion is a very it's a storied game. Okay, so it was originally released in 2016 as a digitally only collectible card game. And it's Justin Gary from Stoneblade Entertainment, who did Ascension, and probably a few other games that you know. But that's like the big one, Ascension Tactics, Shards of Infinity. That's all Stoneblade. I love the Ascension games. It's what got me into the genre. By the time that SoulForge Fusion was announced, Keyforge was already out. So that's Richard Garfield. Richard Garfield is on this. So to me, I go, whoa, a new game that's my 2 favorite game designers. But then come to find out that, yeah, there was an original SoulForge in 2016. It was all digital and it did not really survive, but there was like a cult following. There was a fan base that kept it alive online and unofficial stuff and all this. So they brought it back and brought Richard Garfield on because the new thing that they wanted to do was make a, I guess, unique version, right? So we've been talking about his original, Richard Garfield's original vision for Magic, right? Was that people would have different cards in their deck and they would have to use those cards. SoulForge Fusion, so Mindbug is all the cards are in one. SoulForge Fusion is still collectible in that boosters of this are 4 factions of cards. So different card pools depending on the set, depending on the faction. But each booster you would get 1 deck of 10 cards or 30 cards really, because there are different levels of these cards. But you would get like these decks for each faction. And the point of the game is you take any 2 half decks, 2 factions, and put them together, a la Smash Up, which is another great game. But in this way, you had a little bit of agency as far as deck building. But again, the individual half decks, you're not manipulating the cards in those lists. And you're taking both of those unique lists and putting them together to make an even more unique total list of 20 cards. It's lane-based combat. When you play a card, it upgrades so that later on in the game, you get a more powerful version of it. That's the deck building aspect from Ascension that they grab from and the uniqueness of like Keyforge that they grab from. or SoulForge, the digital game, didn't do as well, but people really, really liked it. So this Kickstarter for SoulForge Fusion was a physical trading card game. And a lot of the reviews for it and feedback for it were, this would be even better if it were digital. So it's so funny. Like, that could be a whole podcast episode in itself about like timing and like what people are into and stuff like that. But so all that to say, SoulForge Fusion is the newest version of an older game from Stoneblade. Richard Garfield came in on the fusion part of it, and they developed this algorithm to make unique half decks. You take any two half decks together, make a full deck. It feels more like Magic the Gathering, though, where you both are like your leader and you have a health points and you play these creatures and spells and you do battle. There is a digital version now. It is still technically, I think, beta. The people who kickstarted the digital campaign have been playing it. Me. I played it at Gen Con 2. That was super cool.
Yeah, and you got to meet him. You got to meet.
I got to meet Justin Gary and tell him that me and my wife have played Ascension, the mobile app, over 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so SoulForge Fusion is actually really, really cool because it takes away the tax of knowing a meta and building all of your deck, right? Instead, you are getting these unique list of 10 cards, and the way that their algorithm works is that there's a type of card, like so Elf Warrior, right? Mm-hmm. But then it also has an adjective that determines the stats on the cards. So I might have an aggressive Elf Warrior in this faction, and you might have a bashful Elf Warrior. And so they have different stats. Then they do that for every other card. So every deck is unique. And that's very, very cool. Yeah. When you open a booster, your list of 10 cards is completely unique. And then you match it with another half deck. And so it's very, very exciting. It's fun to play just sealed straight out of the box, where you just buy a booster, take 2 of your 4 decks, put them together, and play 3 rounds or whatever. But then there's also, when you know your combos and you know the card pool relatively well enough, you might put 2 decks together and play constructed. But what's cool about the digital app is there's also a player versus AI mode, so you can play your physical decks against a computer. And I think it's gonna catch fire once it's released to everybody, which is very, very soon. If you're listening to this right now, it might already be out. Wish listed on Steam. It's coming soon.
Yeah.
It's a great game.
So here's my thoughts on this game, because I have played this game. I remember when it first came out and you were super into it, and I was like, "Ooh, okay. I like Keyforge. I like Richard Garfield. Yeah. This sounds interesting. I'll give it a try." I liked that it was like the unique deck game, but there was a little bit of deck building, because there's like which 2 half decks.
There's none in Keyforge.
There's none in Keyforge, but with this, which 2 half decks do you put together? I think that I'm going to really like the digital version of this game, because I really liked it, but I felt like because of like the leveling up of the characters and the keeping track of the lanes and things like that, I felt like it was a little too fiddly for me.
Yeah.
And so, but the digital version, just all of that fiddliness gone. A computer does it for me. So
it's so funny because, again, it was digital first.
Yeah.
And so everyone was like, "Oh, this would be so cool if I could play this in person with people." And so, 7 years later or whenever they did it,
yeah,
they go, "Hey, it's physical," and people get it. They start playing it, and they go, "Damn, this would be so much easier if it were digital." And so I do agree, since it is a game that was based off of digital play. Yeah, it feels like a digital game, right? Like, there are minions, they like summon tokens. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, so just make it digital. If all of the improvements to it are like a digital game, why isn't it digital?
Yeah.
So now it is. And it runs great. Like, just keeping track of each of your half decks, putting the combinations together, and being able to practice against not a real person.
Yeah.
So it's great. The app is perfect. It's the best way to play this game. But also, like, it is just fun. It is fun in person. But I will agree, like, it is mechanically weird physically. It is definitely it's in its final form, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm excited to play the digital version because I did like this game when I tried it. I distinctly remember you and I sitting at a brewery and
we played it at tailgate.
Yeah, you pulled this out. I had a couple beers, so it was a little hard to follow. But we still
beat me though.
I think I did. I had some like big tree folk dude that like
I gave you a green purple deck that just spammed minions, and so you had a lot of these things called Oak Fathers.
That's it. Yeah, the Oak Fathers.
They trample basically. They have what's called breakthrough. It's trample. So like anything you put in the lane against it, if it kills it, its leftover attack goes to the opponent's health. It's awesome.
So we have seen Richard Garfield's mind tackle this problem of unique deck games in many different forms. And some might say that he finally cracked it with a game that we're going to talk about next. And I know you're excited to talk about it.
Very excited.
That game is Keyforge.
It's my favorite game.
So I'm going to let you just take it away.
Okay. Sorry for just how much of a fanboy I'm going to sound for this game, but it's special to me. It is very, very special to me. Found it at a really good time in my life, but also like just what I've been through since it's been conceived in all of this. So Keyforge is a unique deck game. That means that instead of booster packs to buy new cards to put into a deck with other booster cards or other pre-constructed decks, you buy one deck and you play that deck against any other deck. Revolutionary, right? Like that's a big deal. And so a lot of questions are floating around this when this is being announced, like 2018, right? And then I believe it was like first playable at Gen Con in 2018. It came out in November of 2018. But the concept, the way I first heard about it was Team Covenant. They're like, hey, this was a game we played at Gen Con. It seems pretty incredible. Every deck is unique. How does that work? I wanted to know. Richard Garfield, doctor, made magic. And when you like, this was the aha moment for me. I was like, everything I disliked about Magic, which wasn't a lot, but granted, there were some things about Magic. But basically, like, we've looked at Richard Garfield. We know what he wanted Magic to look like in 1993. We've seen these other games. Netrunner was asymmetrical, so the decks are different, you know, like different factions, different cards, all this stuff. Keyforge, the way that Richard Garfield talks about it is, yes, there are bad cards. Yes, there are bad decks. But the way the game is structured, the way that at least he envisioned it, and FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, who originally published it, definitely like worked on it with him, definitely reeled in some of his ideas. He wanted it to just be no algorithm, like not even put cards together that should be. He just wanted it to spit random lists. So FFG, I think this isn't like fully official, but like what I'm assuming is FFG had their group of designers and were like, yeah, but we need to like make it competitive. So we need to balance it a little bit. And so then they came up with the concept of this algorithm, right? So each Keyforge deck, each set, they're all playable, they're all legal. Each set has a amount of cards that the earlier sets are like 400 cards. The newer sets that are recently coming out and that are going to come out are a lot lower, about like 300. But the way the algorithm works is that it gives you 3 out of 7 houses or like factions. And so in the big group of a card pool for each set, it's divided by 7. And there are this many of this house, this many of this house that you could possibly get. Those are divided into different rarities: common, uncommon, and rare. And then a special rarity, which we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, this algorithm just spits out 3 out of 7 possible houses per set, a list of 12 cards for each house, and that is your 36 card deck. There are no life totals. There are no resources. All you do in Keyforge is at the start of your turn, you call one of your 3 houses that you have in your deck, and then you can play cards from your hand that match that house or use cards that have already been in play of that house. You use those creatures and play these cards to collect a resource called Amber. And typically, at the very beginning of your turn, if you have 6 Ember, you forge a key. The first player to do that 3 times immediately wins the game. That's it. That's the system. That's the mechanics. That's the whole point of the game. But what makes it so replayable and so unique, and what keeps me playing it 6 years later and just in love with it, is that basic concept, the entire point of the game is to mess with that. So there are cards that increase key cost. There are cards that take your opponent's Ember and either put it onto my creatures and like kind of hold them and try to protect them, or I steal them completely and put it into my pocket. And so those identities and those mechanics are then spread out across the 7 different houses. So in the first set, if you had one of the houses called Logos, you know that a lot of your cards are going to let you draw. They're going to let you put cards away to make a bigger hand size and play more and more cards on a future turn. Like, you know, you're going to have efficiency. There's no decking out. There's no milling. If your deck runs out, you shuffle your discard pile and build a new deck. You aren't hurting your opponent. Creatures have power, but it's just so quick. It's such a tug of war. It's such a back and forth that like board wipes are really easy to just play. Disruption cards are just there. They're available. They're all there, but you don't choose them. So what happens is players of all these card games with a meta are coming together and looking at this game and going, I don't know what's good.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of fun playing this deck.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of good answers against these decks. There is kind of a meta, though, because that's just what naturally forms. People tend to think that a certain set is more powerful than others. But competitively, you can play any Keyforge deck at a tournament.
Yeah.
Against any other Keyforge deck. So every deck that I've bought over the last 6 years is viable, is legal, and is playable. That's money well spent. I have a drawer full of set 4 decks.
I've seen it.
Yes. Literally, they were, when FFG was tanking Keyforge and was getting rid of it, Asmodee had a fire sale. Set 4 Keyforge decks, which were normally $10, were $1 a piece. I bought 100. And all 100 of those are mine. No one else has those decks. Do you hear me? That's amazing.
Although I will say, you do love to give out Keyforge decks too.
I love giving away Keyforge decks because then they're yours. They're not mine anymore. It's so cool. Growing up, I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! And they would be playing, and Weevil Underwood goes, I have Insect Queen, and no one else has Insect Queen. You're like, oh, what the hell does Insect Queen do? That's kind of what Keyforge is. You have rare cards. That doesn't mean they're better. But what it does mean is that they don't show up as often. So now you have to realize how your deck wants to play around that rare card. There's a card in set 1 called Khalifi Dragon. It's 12 power. At the time, it was the most powerful. It has an incredible on play effect, a really good like after you use it effect. It's very, very good. The only straw is that you can't play it unless you have 7 or more Ember in your pool, which at the beginning of your turn, if you have 6 or more, you have to spend it to forge a key. So it's kind of difficult to get out onto the field. So people wrote that off. Set 2 comes out. There are a lot of cards in set 2 that stall your forging a key. So there are ways to sequence your turn like a deck building game. Kill an enemy, steal this, take that, and then suddenly you have 7 Ember, but you can't forge during the middle of your turn unless you use a card that says so. So suddenly I can play Khalifi Dragon a lot more often when my opponents are using the new set that are keeping me with Ember or increasing my key cost so like 6 isn't enough. And then suddenly these old decks come back from nowhere.
Yeah. And
that's what we're seeing now.
You're digging through your decks in your closet. You're like, do I have any with the dragon in it? Like, do I have that dragon? And it's funny you mentioned that one card because I remember I only have one deck that has that dragon in it. And I was so excited when I opened that deck because I was like, oh yeah, I've got it. I've got it right here, baby.
Yeah. And I only have one deck that has a dragon also. And I have a lot of decks.
Yeah, you have a lot.
So it's like when I would see people playing a Khaleesi dragon deck where the dragon comes out pretty often and is impactful, I'm like, I want a deck that lets me do that.
Yeah.
So then that's where the secondary market of Keyforge comes in. The fans created what's called decks of Keyforge, where you can get on here and list all your decks that you don't want. Other people might gel with your deck better, but they can't build their own deck, so they have to buy yours. And you're like, okay, well, then that frees me up to buy a deck from this set that I missed out on. Maybe I've never gotten able to buy that set from a store, but I know that it has this specific house or these specific cards in it that I want because the sets are different. The houses change, the theme changes, but they are all playable.
Yeah.
And my dream for Keyforge and what Richard Garfield's original vision was that you could walk into a store and it's like Magic, right? There's a bunch of sets. But in Magic, some of those sets aren't legal for competitive. For Keyforge, it doesn't matter. You just grab any 2 decks, you and your friend, and you can play Keyforge. You need tokens. That's the only difference between Mindbug and Keyforge that I think Mindbug gets really great is there's no tokens.
Yeah.
Keyforge has a lot of tokens.
There's a lot of
Keyforge is a more complex game.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, underneath.
I mean, I haven't played Mindbug, but just from your description,
yeah,
Keyforge, there's a bit more going on.
Yeah, there's so much. And what the fans will do and what they'll tell you is that instead of thinking of Keyforge like Magic, think of it like Mario Kart. You're trying to cross the third finish line first. And sometimes you fall behind your opponent's tempo, but then you draw the red shell and you hit him with it. And then suddenly you're in the lead. That's what it is.
The red shell or blue shell or whatever is, those board wipe cards that you were talking about earlier. It is insane the high highs and the low lows that you experience during a single game of Keyforge.
Yes. The back and forth is insane. It's so swingy and it's so fun. And so back to bad cards, right? Because there are bad cards.
Yeah.
Richard Garfield's whole point was like, but they're cards. In Magic, I designed cards that no one played.
Yeah.
In Keyforge, every card that gets designed, people will play around. They have to.
Yeah.
And the competitive part of Keyforge, where we're going in the future, because FFG, they wanted to release 2 sets every year. That never happened. There was a very long history where Keyforge was not doing well. Keyforge has since come back. And right now, if you look at it, there's more sets coming out this year than there were before Ghost Galaxy acquired it. There are 4 new sets coming out, and that's crazy. And they're all playable, and they all have different houses. They all have different card pools, but the same gameplay is there, and every deck is different. And because, it's cards, like we talked about at the very beginning, I said something about like the probability or the amount of different combinations of a 52 card deck are insane. 36 card decks are Keyforge. That's still a lot of variations. Not nearly as many as 52, but that's a lot. So you play your 36 card deck against your opponent's 36 card deck 5 times. All 5 of those games are different. I think it is a perfect card game by every sense of the word. Every factor that you could base it on. Timing to play the game, max 30 minutes. Barrier of entry, $10. But I just think the replayability is there. I think the collectability is there. If you really want to, you can collect different types of decks. And the fans really kept it alive. There is such a dedicated group of people in this community and resources that help you get into Keyforge no matter what. Like, you have no excuse if you have any interest in Keyforge. There's no way that you don't find the resources for it. And we can link them if you want to. But like, it's there. This game was on the brink of death by mismanagement, and now it's back and bigger than ever. And so, like, competitively, if you look at it, a lot of people that have been with the game for a long time are a little freaked out because of how many sets are coming out. But that's what Richard Garfield wanted. He wanted you to just know your deck because that's all you can ever know in Keyforge because of how many sets there are, how many cards there are, how many permutations there are, how many unique lists there are.
Yeah.
You have to know the card pool to a certain extent. Sure, you have to know the sets, but that's what separates the skill gap. And I think that's exciting.
When
the fact that I can go to a tournament, I have my deck, but then I might see a deck from one of 10 other sets, and I have to be prepared for that. That's crazy.
When a new set comes out, you don't even have to, and that's kind of what you're saying. Like, you don't have to buy anything from the new set. You just have to get used to playing against those cards. But your deck from set 1 that you know inside and out, and you just spent $10 one time to buy it, like, you can just play that your whole life.
Yeah.
If you wanted to.
It might be the best deck you have. It might be the best deck in the world.
It could be.
Someone sold a Vault Tour, which is like the higher events for the game. FFG did like prizing. Ghost Galaxy is currently doing organized play prizing. Not cash prizing, but like, well, we have a pretty big competitive scene in Keyforge over different formats too. That's another thing that it does so well is you can play the game so many different ways. But there was a deck that won a couple of Vault Tours, sold for $3,500. The person who bought it takes it to Worlds and places top 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these decks now have stories where it's like, that's what Magic was, right? It's like, that guy has Black Lotus and it dominated me. It goes, that guy has a Winds of Exchange deck that has the Scholar token, that has these cards that spam this token that let you draw like crazy. And I just couldn't get my Ember Control out fast enough. He got it by 1. It was 3 keys to 2. It's exciting. Recapping Keyforge games between rounds at a tournament is just so fun because anything can happen. It is a perfect game.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
It's a great game. I remember we've mentioned them a couple times, so definitely huge shout out to Team Covenant because I think for both of us, Team Covenant is just, they make really high. If you don't know who they are, like, please go check them out on YouTube. They also have a great podcast, but they just make really high quality gaming, like tabletop gaming content, and they really believe in, you know, in the games, in good games. They believe in good games. Like, they don't even, they own like a physical store, and they don't even stock like the big 3 that we were talking about earlier. Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Magic. They don't even stock those. They focus on finding these, I guess you could call them hidden gems. They're not necessarily hidden, but they're not, you know, you can't find Keyforge decks at Walmart, but
right. I will say, sorry, real quick. On that note, just to say, Team Covenant introduced me. They were the first I had heard of Star Wars X-Wing, Netrunner, Star Wars Destiny, and Keyforge.
That's exactly
like,
where
they've introduced me to a lot of games.
That's exactly where I was going with it. It's just that's where I first heard about Keyforge, and that's where I was like, when I heard about it, I was like, I'm going all in, and so I went to the launch event at you know, our local game store, and it was awesome. And I had pre-ordered through Team Covenant. I had like their Keyforge subscription for a minute. Ended up canceling it later because of COVID, and I was just like, well, I don't need to be spending this money if I'm not even playing. But I got really into it for a bit. I think Keyforge for me, I've gone into and out of, and I think I really enjoy. You can, you just hop back in. Yeah, no, like
anytime.
Yeah,
it's like riding a bike. It's the bike of card games.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about earlier with Magic. Like, I know how to play Magic, so if I just hop back in, like, I can do that. And same thing with Keyforge. And the cool thing about Keyforge, like you mentioned too, there's different formats, and my favorite, and I think yours too, is sealed. Which is, for anyone who's not familiar with sealed formats in card games, it basically means that everyone in the event that you're playing in is playing with cards that they have not seen or prepared in any way. They just show up and open up fresh cards. Keyforge is really interesting sealed because you just open up a single deck, and then whatever cards are in there, that's your deck. And you're playing it. And to your point earlier, there could be really bad cards in there, But there could be cards in there that you thought were bad, but in this deck, maybe they pop off. And that's what's really cool about it. And the story that kind of unfolds. Also, the coolest thing about Keyforge, because the decks are randomly generated, you also on the back have your Archon, which is you get like a little image of what they look like, and then you get a name for your deck. Your deck has a name. And so there are decks that I don't remember what cards are in them, but I remember how they felt to play, and I remember their name. Like one of my favorite decks that I have is Noxious Wick of the Dunes. And I freaking love that deck. I actually have a deck pulled up right now called Pleasance Shallow Bridges Mastermind. This is somebody's deck that they posted on Board Game Geek. And my deck, Noxious Wick of the Dunes, has the same houses because you get 3 houses. Mine has Shadow, Dis, Untamed, and my deck is the same. So, and those are some of my favorite houses. I love those houses. But yeah, Keyforge, awesome game. I definitely think, especially if you love Magic and you're looking for something new to check out, Keyforge is perfect to pick up. Again, $10 entry fee. There are tokens you need, but if you play lots of card games, you probably have
sufficient tokens.
You have tokens of some kind, I'm sure, that you
can use dice too.
Yeah,
you can use anything. That's another thing about Keyforge is when it first came out, like people clamored to just make their own tokens and their own way of tracking stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a testament to the game itself because that breaks language barriers. Keyforge is printed in a lot of different languages. And at World Championships last year, we had people from out of the United States in Minnesota to play Keyforge, and we all knew what was happening at the same time. It's just neat. There's such a cool community about it. And like, again, like if you really want to get into the meta of it, gosh, you don't like if you're doing a draft, right? It's not like traditional draft where you get packs and you put together a deck and you spend an hour doing that and then you play 4 rounds. It's, hey, I showed up, I bought a coffee, I bought a deck. We started right now. We played 3 rounds and we're done. Like mentally, it's just such an easy game to just play. My wife and I take it to bars. We'll just go to bars, grab a couple of cellophane decks that we haven't opened yet, bring a couple tokens, and we just play Keyforge. It's so easy.
Yeah, you can just crank out some games. It's a lot of fun. It's Do you think, and I guess this is kind of getting back to what we were talking about earlier, do you think that Richard, he's not here, unfortunately. We couldn't get him, you know, he was busy, so he wasn't able to make it to this episode. I never actually reached out to him.
I know he's listening, though.
Yeah. Do you think that if he were here, he would say that he finally did it and Keyforge is what he had been imagining this entire time? Or do you think that there's still more yet to come and he's going to surprise us with something that we can't even imagine?
I think he'll surprise us. I think he's still got stuff in the tank. I think Keyforge is where Keyforge is literally today.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is for the first time where he really wanted it to be. I would venture to guess. I would speak for him, I think. And I would say that this is it. Where it's like the game has been around and now we're going to get a consistent schedule of releases. And so now we're going to get an influx of new people now that the game is stable. And they're going to go, where do I start? And the person at the game store is going to say, what looks the coolest? And they're going to grab it. And that deck is going to mean something to them. I remember my first deck, Delphinus Dewberry Raconteur. It's Sanctum Logos Mars. I can tell you all 36 cards in that deck because it was my first deck. I opened it and I played it a bunch and it's first set. And I still every now and then go back to it. I love it. And I think that's really beautiful. I think he would be happy with it. But I also do truly believe that he's going to find another way to make the most unique card game. I don't know how that's going to look, but Keyforge is pretty close. I think Soulforge Fusion is really great for the blind sides of Keyforge where there's no agency. I think that's a perfect middle ground. and I'm glad that he did it. I think Mind Bug is awesome because it's different every time, but it's in one box, one tuck box. But I think as far as like casually and competitively, which is my whole deal, which is our whole deal, I think Keyforge is that vision.
Yeah. Keyforge is the perfect casual competitive game. It's
hands down.
Like I play it casually, but I do go to our like in quotes competitive events nearby. But but also I'm really just there for fun. I'm just there to crack open a new deck, see if I get anything crazy in there. You reminded me, my very first Keyforge deck is McElligott, the Bandit of Baked Goods.
I love that.
Yeah. And it was Shadows, Brobnar, and I think Untamed. And I think maybe it might have been Logos. I don't remember exactly, but
sounds pretty good. Call the Archons?
It was Call of the Archons, yeah.
That sounds pretty good.
I got it at the launch event for the game, and
cool.
To your point of the custom tokens, the 2-player starter deck hadn't been released yet. So
right.
I custom made like some little keys out of wood. I went to Hobby Lobby and like painted some keys, and then I bought a bunch of those like plastic orange like fish tank gem things.
Yes.
And was using those for my Amber. Moved off of those pretty quickly though once I was able to get some official tokens, because those were really hard to see. But anyways, I immediately got super into it, and actually that deck had Bumpsy in it. I think it had
I love Bumpsy.
It had 3 or 4 Bumpsy, which just made me
really cool.
It made me like a huge Brobnar fan, which was also fun because Brobnar was not a very popular house in the first set. I don't think people really liked it.
Which is funny because retrospectively, Brobnar in the first set is better than the second and third.
Yeah. Well, I loved that deck because of the Bumpsy. Like having, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 Bumpsy, but it had like a few of him in there.
That's cool.
It was, which by the way, for anyone who doesn't know what I'm saying, Bumpsy, you play him and your opponent loses 2 Amber. Is that right?
1 Amber.
1 Amber. Okay.
But it's a card at common. Yeah. But I don't have a deck with more than 2. So if you have a deck with 3 or 4, like that's really unique because you only have those 12 slots. But 4 of them being Bumpsy, he's a middle of the road power character. He sticks to the board, has a good play effect, and that your opponent can't really do anything about. Like if they're at 6 and you play Bumpsy, they're off check.
Yeah, so they're back down to 5. Push. Yeah.
Yep. And then later, you can combo Bumpsy with a lot of cards that reward you for fighting because Bumpsy is big enough to kill some things. And yeah.
Brobnar love to fight.
Brobnar's so good, and they're good again. They took some time off, right? So that's another cool thing about Keyforge, and what I'm saying about like when there's a bunch of sets, it's like if someone took some time off and they come back into the game next year, right? They go, I played the first 3 sets, and in set 1 there was this house called Brobnar, and I loved them. They were so great. Didn't like them so much in set 2 and 3, and then they weren't in set 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
Or 6. No, they were in 6. They were in Winds of Exchange. So they come back in set 6 and they're good again. And there's like new mechanics in set 6, but also there's new Brobnar cards and then some old Brobnar cards like Bumpsy. So then people are excited to open Brobnar again. Yeah. So if someone walked into the store and they've played Keyforge a little bit, they quickly glance at the Keyforge available. They see Dark Tidings, no Brobnar. I don't want that set. Mass Mutation, no Brobnar. I don't want that set. Grim Reminders, Brobnar. There's a chance to get some Brobnar. And that's the newest set. Okay, I'll just jump right back in on Grim Reminders. Or if they don't have Grim Reminders, Winds of Exchange has Brobnar. That's only a couple sets old. I'll get into that. Or even better yet, if there's Call of the Archons on the shelf and they go, that's the set that I used to play, and I hear that it's still got gas, I'm going to buy a new Call of the Archons deck that no one's opened yet.
Yeah.
And you might have fucking heat.
Yeah. That's the thing is there are Call of the Archons, the very first set, there are Call of the Archons decks that are still yet to be found. The world's greatest Keyforge deck might still be sealed in a box.
Yep. So another great thing about Keyforge is a fan-made website where you can play it online. It's scripted. It's not fancy. It's not official, but it is scripted. You can actually log into a game, get paired up against someone else, and play any of your decks right now. As of right now, any of your decks. And I was on there last night, and I was playing against someone who was playing a deck from set 2. And I looked it up because you can look up each deck. They're scanned into a website, and they're all up there. So like over 3.2 million decks have been scanned and are on this website. So I look up that deck, and it tells you when it was discovered or when it was scanned. And it was scanned recently, like within 2024. And it has a combination of cards in it that is sought after and that only exists in that set. And that deck kicked my brand new deck's ass because that's what Keyforge is. He beat me 3 keys to 0, and I think he forged all 3 keys on 1 turn. It's one of those decks. Like, it takes some setup, but there are cards in this specific list that if you play the game correctly and if your opponent doesn't have the answers at the right time, it can win in 1 turn. And that was just recently discovered.
That's crazy.
But that's a deck that was printed in 2019. That's why Keyforge is cool.
That's awesome.
It's so fun. Every time you open a new deck, it could be the best deck that anyone's ever seen. And it's so good. All right. I could gush about Keyforge.
Well, Cam, I think that kind of takes us through everything that I had prepared to talk about Richard Garfield.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what's next. I think it's Sandland.
Is he a designer on Sandland?
He is a designer on Sandland.
Oh my gosh.
It's somewhat a unique card game. So when we have more information about that, I'd love to come back and talk about Sandland.
Yeah, we should definitely check that out. I'm definitely interested now that I know that. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the next one.
I am so glad that we were able to talk about Richard Garfield today. I think he is an incredible game designer. He has made so many incredible games, and I definitely, as a tribute to him, this episode's kind of a tribute to him. I definitely owe quite a bit to him as far as like me being into games. I didn't start with a Richard Garfield designed game, but I think I definitely fell in love with games through games that were designed by him. So owe him quite a bit. But yeah, anything else you'd like to say before we let these good people go?
Just support games, especially creators that you like. When someone bottles lightning like Magic the Gathering, and then they have the resources and the respect to make whatever they want, play those games, because that's where the magic is. No pun intended. Damn, I really didn't mean to do that. But like, I am just so inspired because of how much I love some of these games to play all these other ones. And that's how you discover and learn new things and meet new people with similar interests. Just explore the hobbies that you really like. Like, don't let anything get in your way. If you know of any of these games on this list, check out the other ones, and I guarantee you'll find something that you like. And that's just a testament to Richard Garfield's mind. Yeah, absolutely. Big fan.
Absolutely. Anytime I go to any type of like when I go to Gen Con, I have a my very first Magic card that I ever got in my bag with a pen ready to go. I want him to sign it.
Wow.
It is a common card. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's just like some worthless common card from like some really like older set. And it was I was in my local game store, and the dude who owns the store, I like found the card on the ground and I went and gave it to him. I was like, hey, I think somebody dropped this. And he looked at it and knew it was like a worthless card, and he was like, you can just keep it. And I was like, really? And I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, why not? And I was like, cool.
Yeah.
It was my first Magic card. I didn't even know how to play, and I don't think I even picked up the game till like maybe a couple years later, but I just have it still.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, that's like, so cool. For me, I would love to have him sign it, just because it's like, it means it's a worthless card. It means absolutely nothing to anyone but me. So,
and I bet it means something to him.
Yeah.
The way I hear him talk about the games that he makes, like, yeah, I just you can feel the passion and the care in a lot of those games.
Yeah.
That's such a cool story.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go look up he has all sorts of videos on YouTube of him giving speeches and stuff about game design.
Yeah.
Go look that up.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, just like go onto YouTube and search Richard Garfield and you'll find all sorts of great content. If you're an aspiring game designer, I don't think there's anyone else that would be a better mentor than him. Like, I mean, there might be some people who are good mentors, but I just think like,
yeah,
if you want some good game design advice, go listen to hear what he has to say, because he's not gonna do you wrong.
Yeah, he blazed the trail for a lot of games. Even if he's not directly involved with them, you can, like, if you really look into it, you can see these mechanics and things and ideas in current games that he was the pioneer of, really. And it's only a good thing for the evolution of games. That's what's cool about him, is he's constantly looking for the next weird thing to do.
Yeah.
He's not just resting on his graces. Like, he could have designed Magic up until now, but he just designed the game, right? The core concepts, let other people do all the dirty work. He got all the money, and then he just gets to create any idea that pops into his head. And he does. Like, there are so many different games, so many different genres, and so many different, like, themes and ideas. And it's just, they all come from the same brain. And I just think that's special.
Yeah.
It's like if you find a director you love, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you feel them in the thing that you're watching or that you're experiencing, even though it's totally different from the last movie that you saw directed by them. But there's little touches to it where you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely that, made by that person. All right, I think that's going to do it for us. Really appreciate everyone tuning in for episode 1 of the Casual-Petitive Games Podcast. We're going to keep this going. We're going to talk about all sorts of different things. So go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, CasualPetitive Games, or you can go ahead and subscribe to whatever RSS feed you are listening to this on. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but basically, if you're on Apple, it'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of that stuff. You already know that if you're listening to it there. I don't really know what this podcast is going to look like going forward, but we're going to just do some wacky, fun stuff with it. The whole concept is casual and competitive gaming. So anything having to do with games we'll cover on the show. Feel free to leave some comments if you either have some thoughts about things we said today or have some topics you really want us to cover. No guarantees, but we like games and we like talking about them, so could happen. Go ahead and check out our YouTube channel. We have a few different things on there. We play some games. We live stream some games. We're really into Battle Spirit Saga, so we have a podcast about that game called Absolute BSS. So if you like Battle Spirit Saga or you're interested in discovering Battle Spirit Saga, check out our podcast, see what you think. And don't forget to join our Discord as well. We'll have a link in the description for that. Just a fun group of people, all just who love games. A lot of Battle Spirit Saga players, but also a lot of people in there right now who play lots of different things. So definitely I've seen our Keyforge players start to grow. So we've got a fun group of people in there, and sometimes people hop in and just jump into one of our voice channels and play some games together. So it's a fun time. So definitely join if you're looking for a fun, casual-petitive community. We're definitely trying to be your ultimate hub for that. So thank you, Cam, so much for joining me today. And thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll catch you next time. See ya.
Bye.